Hi, it's Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department at FIT. Doing another tutorial on organic modeling. Continuing class with this concept of top and side modeling. Creating a top and side pieces. Before we actually do the extrusion for a form like this, we want to model the top. That's the power of this, is that we can go in and in a very detailed way model our piece. For control point editing, once again, predictability is what you're after. You want to have as few surprises as possible, the minimal number of surprises. You want to feel confident that you always know what's coming next. Okay? To the extent that you can. That's why I went to the trouble of laying out the grain of this surface in a predictable and useful way. Why I rebuilt the surface so it had a consistent span and spread of points with a center row and a nice low amount of math to begin modeling. It's not overly complicated, it's complicated enough. Okay? The next thing I want to do is set up my workspace so that it's appropriate for control point modeling. I don't want to have to keep popping up in here and pulling things down. So the two toolbars that I use a lot when I do this work is I use the control point select menu, or toolbar, I should say, and I use the visibility toolbar, but that's up here and I don't want to have to keep going back and forth for it. So I'm going to pull it from here. You can actually come over here on any of these toolbars. You can come anywhere on this one, for example, and hit show toolbar. Any toolbar you can click on and hit show toolbar, and it gives you a list of the toolbars available in Rhino. I'm going to click on visibility. So now I have these two small toolbars that I like to use. I'm going to place them on the side here. I want them to go on top here between my layers and properties panel and my object snaps. And I'll put visibility right below there. Okay, so now I have access to these functions very easily while I'm working. Of course, I should have an idea of how I want to model this, what I'm trying to make. I'm going to go ahead and work with the same idea I've worked with other examples this semester, and that is with placing a controlled groove, kind of a plant swelling form going on in here. But it's not the only thing available. I could do other things for sure. It's just easy to do in a predictable way for this tutorial. Turning on my control points, going to grab the center line. Now, these two buttons, select U and select V, are the ones we use the most for this kind of modeling. One of these is the U direction, one of them is the V direction. Rhino assigns that randomly. So you have to just check and see. And I was lucky. On this surface, the lengthwise rows of control points are the U direction. So if I want to do that, I'll select that. If I want the other direction, I'll select V. I don't want to move all of these down. I want to leave the ends pretty intact, because they're going to come off into points that I don't want to have a groove down the middle of. Maybe I do want a groove down the middle of this point, because I can do that as well. I'll leave that. Make it a little more interesting. Front C-plane, so I can do some vertical movement. I don't care for gumball when I'm doing this because it's in my way. And I can start collapsing the center of this. Also, when I'm control point editing, I like to have flat shade activated. Makes it easier for me to see what I'm working with. usually, class, I want to pick what my lowest point is going to be when I first start modeling. And then I will soften it, or not even soften it. I will develop it after I've gotten the maximum depth that I'm looking for, the most extreme thing I'm looking for. Now, mind you, that will change as the piece develops. I'm sculpting here, but for now that looks smart to me, looks correct. I'm going to select the full row of points again, and I'm going to come down here to the visibility. This is the button I use all the time. I have this whole panel here just for that button. It inverts selection and hides the control points. So it means it's going to hide everything but that row. I'm going to go into wireframe because it will allow me to see the points better. And then I can do a more gradual, more controlled fall off here. I don't have it shaded because I understand what I'm doing here. I'm just trying to make this groove come in gradually. If I wasn't clear on that, I would keep it shaded so I could see. But you can see that's what I've done. It comes in very gradually. And then it stays. Don't want it quite that deep here where it's narrow. That seems very severe to me. So, and usually at the end, class, I'll pick 2 points, not 1. Just because this, remember Rhino, this is the anchor and the sub-anchor. This determines the flow coming off of this surface. And if I want something kind of predictable, because I'm still going to be modeling the point eventually, I want to keep this relationship between these 2 points the same. I can change it later if I want to. But once again, it's low-hanging fruit. It's one of those things that I'm usually pretty clear about what I want, so that's pretty nice. Okay. That's my first step in modeling the organic quality into the surface. Now I want to add more points. I want to be able to have more control in here. When you're doing control point editing, it's important to start with as few points as you can to get the general form going, and then you only add points as you need them. The way you add points is not to add points, but rather to add knots. So you go to the Edit menu, Control Points, Insert Knot. Often I have symmetrical turned on to yes. That will give me a row of points on either side of the center line of the surface. I'm going to come in fairly close to the center and add this. Now, as I add these points, it will not change the surface. The surface will look exactly the same. And I'm going to go ahead and add another row a little further up. Enter. Okay, so now I have a more complicated surface that I can work with to get more detail. I'm going to select these 2 rows of points. Okay, and I'm going to do the invert select and hide. So all I see are those 2 rows of points. I'll go ahead and select them again. I don't want these to change. In fact, I don't want anything to change necessarily until about here. And I don't believe I want these to change very much at this end. The rest I'm going to bump down, no, up a little bit. And I can actually see those cross-section isocurves. These isocurves give me a preview of what the cross-section is going to do. And you can see as I bump those up, I get more of a V down in here. And of course the effect changes slightly as you go down. I like that. Shade, just to make sure I'm getting what I want. And you can see that V has deepened. Okay, I want to turn on all points. So escape to turn off the points, or F11, and then F10 to turn them back on. I want the next row of points over. I want this one and this one. Select the full length of the piece, invert and hide. Once again, I'm going to select the entire row, and I'm going to, I can actually see where I started last time. I started about right here. So I'm going to go in the same area, take these off, and down at this end, for now anyway, take the same ones off. And I'm going to move these up slightly. In fact, I think I'll move them up a ways to get this kind of a swept cross-section going, where it comes way up. I like that. I am not going to pay a lot of attention to the sides because, as you know, my sides are going to be rolling over, curving to meet the sidewall. So spending a lot of time there does not make a lot of sense. F11 to turn off, F10 to turn them back on. I think I want to play with these rows again. Select them. I want the next effect I'm doing to be primarily down through this area. So I'm going to lift these up even more to really get a sharper groove going in here. And I'm going to want to deepen the center groove. Through here. Okay. And if I want to put a really crisp crevice here, I'm going to need to add another row of points, which means insert knot. I'm going to come right down in here, very close to the center, and click. And that will give me another set of points. Okay. I want to pick the 2 points, the 2 rows that are closest to the center and the center. So those 3 rows. Select them, hide the rest. To create this crease, I'm going to move these points inward towards the center, and the easiest way to do that is a 2D scale. With point snap turned on, I'm going to right click on the scale button for 2D scale and grab that center point. 2D scale makes it so those 2 points don't drop in at all, don't lower in altitude, except for I need to have the proper C-plane activated. I want the top C-plane because it'll be 2D based on what the C-plane is. I want them to come in towards the center without going up or down in elevation. And that will give me a much crisper crease. Down the center. Okay, I can actually select all 3 points. It won't matter because I'm using the origin point as the center one. Remember, your origin is the one place that doesn't move, so that point won't be affected. I'm going to use this to give a little more definition in here of where that's at. Not so much there. Okay, so I've got it happening there, and I would like it to happen right here where this goes around the corner. And you can see how the cross section is affected. Alright, and I can now, since these are closer together, I can grab the center points on these and move them down, either by going into the front C-plane for a vertical C-plane, or in this case, if I want to, I can activate gumball. Make sure, though, if you use the gumball, that you only pull on the vertical arrow. Don't grab this little... If you grab this little grid over here, it means that you're going to be moving planar to this direction. We don't want that, okay? We want specifically to move straight up and down. This is a really important concept with control point modeling. You always want ortho. You very rarely want to move points without using an ortho direction, and usually you're only moving them vertically at this point. You're not moving them X and Y, you're only moving them Z. Okay? There are exceptions to that. If you are going to move them freehand, basically, you'll want to be very aware of what construction plane is active so that they don't go in the wrong direction. You don't want to change elevation accidentally, for example, any more than you want to change left and right and forward and back. And X, Y. Going to move this down again a little bit. And I think that's enough for those points. Now, I did have an idea about swelling it here a little bit. So, if I want to remember where I'm looking, I'm going to keep my mouse right here. So when I turn off the points, and I turn on the points, I know where I want. I want right here and here. I want those points turned on. Invert, select, hide, turn off gumball. I'll go ahead and activate my front C-plane because I do prefer moving with a vertical C-plane over gumball. I want the swell to take place towards the back here, towards this area. I'll move those up, and you can see what that does. Gives me a bump or a ridge there. And I want to do the same thing here where this groove gets deep. Now these are arbitrary classes. I'm really doing these just to show you the sculpting potential of what I can do, should I want to. Okay, and then I would probably want to smooth this out a little bit. And once again, with just these 2 rows of points visible, it's easy to do. I can see how they relate to the next point down the line. keep there from being any really unexpected bumps or lumps in my piece. Key part of control point editing is selection. Always make sure you've got exactly the points you want. Okay? That's a little abrupt here at the end. So that is some fun modeling of the top surface here. I'm going to take flat shade off. There's kind of an irregularity here. I don't really know why that's there. I'm going to look and see. I think that is just a shading glitch because the flow between all of these points looks pretty good. These might be causing the problem. They might be a little low. Now it doesn't really matter because when I create the sidewall, but I can lift them up a little to alleviate that. Because, you know, I try and be symmetrical, once again, predictable, same, all the way across. But sometimes one side of a cross-section wants or needs something else. And, of course, I could model this completely asymmetrically if I wanted to. I could have this be a bump over here and have these level out quite a bit if I wanted to. I could leave bumps in my surface on purpose if I wanted to. So, map it, show you what we have. That's nice. Now the edges are going to roll over, and that's the whole point of modeling this way. But the center is done. Okay? That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.